Hey guys, what's going on? It's Tim Best, and welcome to Making Moves with Tim and Tim at 10 on Tuesdays. Obviously, this is just Tim and not the other Tim today, but I hope that's okay with you guys. Um, Vitelli is on his way back from the F1 race in, I guess, Austria, maybe over the weekend. Uh, Sounds like they had a great time. Vitelli got a little bit delayed yesterday, so it's just me today. But hey, guys, listen. Um, Hope you're doing well. Hope everybody's having a good time and enjoying this amazing heat wave that we're having. Man, if you're on the East Coast, it is hot. Um, so hopefully you guys are staying cool, enjoying the World Cup. If you haven't been watching that, man, it's been really cool to see what other countries think of the United States. I was over in Asia for a few weeks and watching from abroad, and it's really been cool to keep up with everybody else and what they're thinking of the United States and checking out the country as they travel around. So I hope you guys are enjoying that as much as I am. Um, but hey, um, wanted to talk about something this week, maybe a little bit different, maybe a little personal, if you will. I have been wrestling with a little bit of personal decision in my life, and I wanted to share it with you guys because it's kind of reminded me of a few things that I think I'd lost a little bit of track of. Um, so I've been wrestling with a real life decision, and it reminded me of one of the biggest lessons that I've learned about building wealth. And as I've been managing companies, building companies, managing real estate, it really kind of reminded me of a few things. So let me kind of lay out the situation for you. Um, you guys know I'm a little bit older. I'm 51 now, be 52 this year. And I've spent decades, guys, building businesses since 2006. Corporate career since 1998. Yeah, I go back to the 90s, guys. And over that time, I've built multiple businesses, built a pretty good real estate portfolio with Vitelli. I've built a property management company, built a fairly decent net worth over that time, multiple income streams. I got a primary residence I've been in for 20 years, built some decent equity there. I got a lake house on Lake Norman, cash in the bank, investments. Um, but over time, uh, lately, my wife and I have been considering, with our daughter going off to school and us becoming empty nesters, like, hey, let's sell our primary residence and move to the lake. And we go out there. We bought a lake house about 18 months ago now. I think some of you guys are aware of that, with the plan to renovate it. And really, guys, like a substantial renovation. Um, and you know, laying out the situation for you. Let me also tell you, my wife and I refinanced our primary residence in 2021. If you guys remember the rates then, they were crazy low. I think our rate's like 2.85%. I don't really owe a ton on this house, but what I do owe is at some crazy low rate. Um, and the lake house, man, we've got substantial equity there too. We were able to put a decent amount down on it, but that rate's like closer to 6.25. Um, the mortgage on that thing is triple what my primary residence is. This house. Um, so as I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm going to go do the substantial renovation on this lake house and make it pretty close to what we would ideally love to have, but not necessarily exactly what we want. And I'm going to walk away with a mortgage that's 3 times what I have on my primary residence today. So, and like, listen, it's not that I can't afford it. I can. But it always brings to question, that age old question of, just because you can afford something, should you? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no. Honestly, it's a very personal thing. And the thing is over the last few weeks while we've been traveling around, my wife and I have been having a conversation, and it's like, hey, I really enjoy the freedom to be able to do this. We just went and spent 3 weeks in Asia with my daughter, celebrating her graduation before she heads off to college. And we were able to travel around Korea, Japan, Thailand, and really not care too much about, what we were doing. Quite frankly, like didn't have to, count the pennies, anything like that. It's a certain level of lifestyle and lifestyle freedom that I talk about quite a bit, but sometimes I think I forget that doing other things maybe impacts the ability to do that. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today is, just because you can afford something, should you? And then I start to take that back to like some of the wealth building principles that, I've learned over time that some of my mentors have taught me. And, really the difference between being rich and building wealth. And guys, listen, I have a decent net worth, but I don't really consider myself rich. I have a lot of lifestyle freedom that I've built for myself. But and I guess in that way, you could say that I'm rich. I'm rich in lifestyle freedom. I'm not working for a paycheck. Not living paycheck to paycheck. And this is really kind of like where the principle comes down to. And let's spend a few minutes kind of talking about that, like the difference between being rich and building wealth. And this is like what some of my mentors have taught me over time is, hey, there's really like three places every dollar can go. And those three places are consumption, investment, and then opportunity capital. And consumptions are things like cars, boats, vacations, houses, designer kitchens, things that maybe make you feel like you have a better life, but they don't necessarily make you wealthier. And remember, like the wealthy folks or the wealthy don't ask, can I afford it? They ask, what is the money no longer able to do if I spend it here? And I mean, I kid you not, I cannot tell you how many times I have sat with guys who are quite well off and they think about that constantly. Should I sell something for 8 million when I can get 7.5 million today? And you know what I can do with that money while instead of waiting for the extra, few $100,000, I can go make another $1,000,000. Those are the kind of things that I've heard guys say that are doing quite better than I am. So I have to think about those things as I go. So the other place is like investment. Like that's one of the other spots, right? And investment are things like apartment buildings, private lending, businesses, stocks, cash flowing assets, things that produce more dollars, right? I think we all know what investments are. And ideally, our investments produce more money. They take the money that we have today, they multiply it by some number. And that's like the second spot that you can put money. So we got consumption, investment, and then opportunity capital. And that's really money that's just kind of sitting there waiting for opportunity, right? Like that's how I think about it. So you got cash on hand, liquidity, dry powder. We call it all these different things, and that's ultimately what it is. And opportunity capital gives you the ability to say yes when everyone else has to say no. Guys, I think you've heard me talk about this in the past, right? Like back in 2008 and 9, when everybody was, struggling with the downturn in the real estate market. And, I was in that boat, right? I didn't have any dry powder. I didn't have any liquidity. I was over leveraged at the time. And, I was not in a position to say yes, but I saw some guys who were, and I told myself at that time, I'm like, the next time this happens, the next time this comes around, I'm not going to be where I am. I'm going to be where they are. Because let me tell you, those guys back then that had dry powder, that could deploy it and say yes when people like me were saying no, man, they were really, really well off a few years down the road. They were able to buy deals that were just insane. So, opportunity capital is big. And quite frankly, I've seen some of this market coming that we're in right now. And, I've been working to have opportunity capital sitting there. And that is, one of the things that I've seen over the last, couple of years, is there's going to be strong opportunity. There has been some opportunity. And, when I start to look back at like this dilemma that I've been working on right now that I've been considering, I'm like, do I really want to go do this? Or do I want to use some of this opportunity capital? Because remember, I can use this money to go renovate this place and make something close to what I would like, close to what my wife and I want. Or I can use that opportunity capital to go invest it, right? I can go say yes to some opportunity as it comes across my plate. And that could be, I don't know, somebody needs some private lending and they're willing to pay 3 points and 15%, right? That's great. I earned 3 points right out of the gate and 15% annualized. That's a pretty strong return. Or, that 20 unit shows up and I'm able to go do that myself or with a JV partner rather than with 5 partners. Now I own half of it, maybe even 60% because I got this opportunity capital sitting there ready to invest. So instead of going and putting into a renovation that's going to cost me money, remember I talked about that triple mortgage, right? 3 times the mortgage, rather than going to renovate and do that, then I'm able to go invest it and actually make money. So I don't take on a mortgage that's 3x what I have today. And I'm also creating additional equity and cash and potential cash flow for myself. So I'm actually better off in that scenario. So those are the kind of things that you have to take into consideration. And like I said, when I've talked to guys who, are way better off than I am, been doing this way longer than I have, those are the types of things that they think about. And it's not that they don't go do those things, right? It's not that they don't go buy the house on the lake. It's not that they don't go buy the crazy condo and ski in, ski out in Vail or something like that. It's not that they don't do those things. It's that they weigh the decision before, right? And they're like, is this what I want to do today? Or do I want to go create a cash flowing asset for myself? So, the other thing that they kind of talk to me about is like, every dollar has a job, right? When I started to think about cash as something that had a purpose, like my mindset really started to shift, right? So I started to think about every dollar has a job. And, in this particular case, like in my scenario, this dilemma that I'm talking about, like I have some options, right? The money that I have, I could go spend, say, $600,000 renovating a house and end up with, a house that I really would enjoy. My wife and I would sit there on the screened-in porch looking at the lake, watching the football games in the fall. I mean, guys, that's like in my head, that's like something I really would like to have. But spending that $600,000 results in, a very nice house on the lake with a higher mortgage, less liquidity. And you could basically argue that maybe I have a higher level of lifestyle, but is that not lifestyle creep too? And we could get into that a little bit later if we wanted to. Or option B is sell the lake house because I already own it and maybe go reinvest that money into something additional. Like, I don't know, you guys know I got a daughter going off to college. Instead of paying somebody rent for her to live somewhere while she's at school, let me go buy a townhouse and let her stay there and let her have a couple of roommates that are paying rent, basically paying that mortgage. And now I have a cash flowing, appreciating asset that is producing income for me and keeping me from having to pay for her rent. And I don't have that extra mortgage, right? That I created with the lake house. So, I got the 600,000. Ideally, it's reinvested into something that's cash flowing, like this, condo or townhouse for my daughter. It's saving me on rent for her. It's creating cash flow through roommates that are paying the mortgage and paying me cash flow every month. And then it also, it's an investment that continues to grow. So if I start to think about like, hey, those dollars have a job, they could renovate a house or they could create cash flow and additional equity for me. So, here's the biggest thing. It's like, which one creates the greatest return for me? Well, one creates a return, right? It also causes me an extra mortgage, but it does create a return. Don't get me wrong. Lake house is a great investment. It will appreciate over time. It will also cost me money over time. It does not cash flow for me, but at the same time, it does create an equity investment for me. But the condo, the townhouse, whatever my daughter's living in while she's at school, it creates equity as well, and it creates cash flow for me. And by the way, it probably doesn't cost me 600 grand. So here here's kind of where we are. The answer isn't cut and dry. It's a very personal decision. The answer isn't financial, it's personal because money is simply a tool, right? Every dollar has one job. You either spend it today or you have it work for you tomorrow. And I can't tell you what the answer is for you. I know where I've gotten and where my wife and I decided to make our decision. Um, but it's a very, very personal thing. But I do want to get back to one thing that we talked about just a few minutes ago. And it's this lifestyle creep, guys. Like, I think we've seen a ton of that over the last few years, especially from guys investing in real estate. Listen, I'm not here to judge anybody or whatever, but we've seen it, right? I'm guilty of it too. Went and bought a lake house. Don't necessarily need a lake house. I have a very, very nice primary residence myself. And some could call that lifestyle creep. Some could just say going and buying a dream house in your 50s that you've been thinking about since you were, I don't know, 25 years old. And that's true. But make no mistake, you're buying something that's going to cost you more money. That's lifestyle creep, no matter how you put it. But I've seen folks, and I think we've all seen folks, go from making $75,000 a year to making $500,000, $700,000 a year, and they're still broke, right? They're still broke because every time they make a little bit more, they're spending more. And that is not how the wealthy do it, right? They make a little bit more. Maybe they celebrate in the moment. They do a little something for themselves to celebrate that win. But for most of what they make, they reinvest. They delay that gratification for a while. They're not, every time they make a little bit more, they're not buying a bigger house or a bigger truck or a bigger boat. Instead, they say things like, hey, where can I deploy this capital to bring me in more cash flow? When I was working at the bank, I was working with this guy, and he was buying single family homes. He was one of the guys that kind of like put it in my head to do that after I did the land investing piece. And it was kind of interesting to me because every year we got a bonus, or every time he got a little bit more or a little bit of a raise, he never really changed, right? Drove the same car, lived in the same house, never went to lunch, things like that. But he was always stacking a house, right? Like every year he was like buying a house, buying a rental property, buying this, buying this. Anything that would cash flow, he was buying it constantly. And I remember at the time kind of thinking, like, man, you're like, nothing ever changes in your life. You don't really do these things. You don't take these big trips. You don't go buy the nice new car or anything like that. But then I realized, like, he started talking to me about, like, man, it's delayed gratification. I'm doing this, and 10 years from now, he's like, well, you're still working for a paycheck. I'm going to have 10 rental homes spitting off $1,000 a month. I'm just throwing numbers out there. And he goes, I'm not going to need a job. He's like, I can tell you, no. I can tell you, I don't care. Yeah, it creates a lot of freedom for him. He kept talking about freedom, the ability to say, I don't give a damn about this job anymore. I'm out. And not necessarily that he was going to do that, but the freedom to be able to do it. Excuse my French for a second here. So Mom, I apologize. But there's a movie out there with Mark Wahlberg, not one of his best movies. It's called The Gambler. And John Goodman gives this whole speech in this movie about fuck you money. And he talks about you reach a point where you have a certain amount of money put away and you're able to say, fuck you, when somebody tells you you have to do something. And that's kind of what this guy was getting at, is he's like, I'm getting to a point by doing these things where I don't have to do anything. I don't have to come to work. I don't have to have a job. I've done these things because I've been willing to sacrifice, along the way. And, it reminds me of something a really, really good mentor of mine said one time. And this has always stuck with me. And he's like, hey, man, my goal is not to look rich. My goal is to make it impossible to be poor. And it hit like I didn't quite get that one for a second, right? I was like, your goal is not to look rich, it's not to be poor. And but then it kind of hit me for a second. I'm like, I get it, I get it, I get it. Because there's guys out there who are, driving a fancy car, doing this, doing that, and they're struggling. And then you always hear the story about Sam Walton driving around that old beat up pickup truck, right? Even though the guy was like mega rich, like that's kind of like an extreme version of that whole statement, right? He's like, hey, my goal isn't to like it isn't to look rich, even though I am. My goal is to not be poor. And I think that's where I ultimately ended up. My wife and I ended up with this decision that we're talking about. Is hey, and we weren't necessarily thinking about like looking rich or whatever. It was just a moment where we were kind of like, I want this, I'm going to go get it. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, but right now I have this opportunity to delay some gratification and take this little bit of a nest egg and go put it somewhere that 5 years from now, when I'm 55, 56 years old and my daughter is out of college, well, maybe I've doubled that 600,000. Maybe it's not double. Maybe it's 900 instead of 600. Maybe it is 1 or 1.1. The point is it's more, right? And it's been producing cash flow for me. It's allowed my wife to retire. It's allowing me to have that opportunity to say no when I don't want to do something. And I think that's really, really the goal here, is to avoid lifestyle creep. Because listen, at the end of the day, my goal isn't to die with the nicest kitchen or the biggest house. It's really to have lifestyle freedom and to leave my daughter choices, opportunities and choices that I never had. That's ultimately my goal. It has nothing to do with the car or the boat or the house. That is it right there. And then, guys, like one of the things that it really kind of came back to me on was, I've been talking about my daughter had this. If you guys keep up with my posts, I've been talking about my daughter had this decision: Michigan or NC State, right? One cost her almost $400,000 for 4 years of school. I think it was like 392,000 all in, versus NC State, where she got a little bit of money, and ultimately she's going to spend, don't quote me on this, but like right at 22,000, I think, for 4 years of school versus almost 400,000. And listen, my wife and I sat down with her and we told her, hey, you can do either one. Same bucket of money is available for both. We can pay for Michigan, or we can do this at NC State, and you'll have enough to take a gap year and do some traveling, and you'll have enough money to go to grad school, which she wants to do. And you know what? My 18-year-old kid sat down and thought about it for a second. She's like, I really want to go to Michigan. And I worked really hard to have an opportunity like that. But at the end of the day, I don't want to spend the next 4 years of my life restricting myself over the next 4, is ultimately what she came to. And she decided on NC State, even though that's not where her heart is. It's where mine is. Guys, I'm a Wolfpacker. And she's going to go to state. She's going to walk out of school spending $20,000 for a 4-year education. She's still going to have a substantial piece of that bucket available to go do some other things after school. And ultimately, like, my wife and I are having these conversations, and I'm like, you know what's funny is this is the same decision. This is literally the same decision, is what I want today versus what I want for the next 10 years. And which decision am I going to make? I can afford both, but it's the same bucket of money, and I can afford this today. It's not about afford it. It's about what I ultimately want to do, and, where I want to be 5 years, 6 years, 10 years from now. And at the end of the day, it's the exact same decision. And, I sat down and I looked at it and I was like, man, my 18-year-old made that really tough, mature decision. I'm 51. Let me eat my own dog food for a second. And, ultimately, my 18-year-old reminded me about delayed gratification. Now she's going to college, and ironically, I'm going to step into the next journey, next chapter of my investing journey, and it may also include her and be because of her. Because listen, guys, at the end of the day, the question isn't so much like, can I afford the dream? The question is really, is today's dream worth tomorrow's freedom? That was the decision she made. That's the decision my wife and I are making because, you know, the difference between a millionaire and everyone else isn't income, it's capital allocation. And if you ever want to like figure that one out, let me know and we can chat about it. But hey, listen, I appreciate the show. I appreciate the time. Hopefully, this maybe helps somebody out with a similar situation. And just remember, again, difference between a millionaire and everyone else is an income, guys. It's capital allocation. It's what you do with your money. And that's the much harder question. So, anyway, guys, Vitaly ought to be back next week. So maybe we'll get back to a Tim and Tim episode. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope this helps somebody and that I didn't ramble too much. So take care. See you next week and keep making moves.